Anybody read the New York Times today? Raise your hand if you've read the New York Times today. We are in a world of hurt. There seems to be something that's going on, and we can't seem to do something as basic as solve our problems anymore. And as a sociobiologist, I always look for the genetic hardwiring in the human organism itself that might be tripping us up. Like, what's causing all this infighting in Washington, D.C.? What causes us to become gridlocked? It really bothers me. It really troubles me. So how many people, just as a survey, because you all seem about my age. I know there's some younger people and some folks a little older than me. I just want to ask you, how many people have noticed that things have gotten noticeably more complicated and complex? I mean, really. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for being honest. Because I had somebody try to explain derivatives to me, and I thought my head was going to blow up. And I just talked to Alan Dershowitz, and on my radio program, I have a weekly news program, I said, well, explain the economics behind the national health care program. And he says, I don't understand it. I've had 30 people. This is the greatest legal scholar that the United States has, and this guy can't explain the economics behind a national health care program. But it's not just that. It's whether vaccines cause autism. It's whether hormone replacement therapy is good. It's climate change. We have 1.5 billion readings all across the earth that the temperature is going up, and we have people going, no, it's not. So something's going on. Okay, I don't have slides, so. Hey! Now, this is a way that we can get in touch. I just thought of this, by the way, 2 seconds ago as I asked him to put a modesty step in, so I didn't have to hike my skirt up when I got on the stage. Thank you, whoever put the modesty step up. One way to think about what the human organism is going through at this point in time is to think of two clocks. One clock is the clock of evolution. It's where you adapt and you develop new features, like you become bipedal, or you develop the frontal cortex, which is the CEO of your brain. That clock, every time the hand moves, it's like 100,000 or 4 million years. It's really, really slow. Then we have another clock, the clock of human progress. Every time that hand moves, it's a picosecond, right? Apple's coming out with the new device you just bought. It's coming out with a new one every 6 months. Now, I happen to be a genetic biologist, an evolutionary biologist, but I worked in Silicon Valley for 25 years. And we can have the argument whether those two clocks are meeting today or whether they're going to meet 50 years from now. But when you got one clock moving in million-year increments, developing the prefrontal cortex, these things, making us bipedal, and you got one clock that's moving at picoseconds, I got news for you. Sooner or later, the clocks have to meet. So here's what's interesting. What happens when the clocks meet? Is there a relationship, and this is what I'm going to ask you to think about, is there a relationship between how fast this biological spacesuit can develop new cognitive features and the problems we're having? Consider it. Okay, we got a lot of problems. Climate change, terrorism in the Middle East, it's been around before I was even born, and it seems to be getting worse and worse. We've got pandemic viruses. We've got a global recession like the likes of which we've never encountered before. We have discovered now, these are not working. Complexity, it's not working. Okay, this is where in Vanilla Skies, Tom Cruise yells, tech support. Yeah. We've discovered the two earliest signs of running into a cognitive threshold, where one clock, the clock of evolution, this biological spacesuit, when it can develop new features, runs into accelerating complexity that the human brain itself can no longer deal with. I'm not arguing with historians in the past about what specific event caused ancient civilizations to collapse. Could have been a pandemic virus or a war that did the Mayans in. But I am interested in if there were just some regular Mayan people, like you or I, or some regular Romans that were just walking around the street going, our government doesn't seem to be on top of these problems anymore. Like they're going from one generation to another, and they're getting worse. The problems that we're dealing with right now, debt, currency, pandemic viruses, they've been around a long time, right? I mean, these aren't new. They didn't just come up like last week. So what's been going on? We have more technology, more knowledge than at any other time in human history, and we don't seem to be able to solve them. So what are the two signs we've now discovered occur far before civilization collapse? These are the earliest signs, so run out and tell all your friends. The first sign is we become gridlocked. We become unable to solve our most dangerous problems, even though we know what they are. And I'm going to give you a specific example. We know what's going to do us in, but we fail to act on it, even though we have solutions. Now, we cannot use the same methods for finding lost luggage at the airport to solve climate change. But up to a certain point, that's all we've evolved. Our left and our right brain, all it knows how to do is solve problems like we find lost luggage. It doesn't really know exponentiation. It doesn't really understand how to solve problems that are chaotic, the kind that physicists deal with every day, that have lots of variables, and if one variable changes by 0.00001 decimal points, everything else changes, the complete model changes. That's the kind of financial environment you and I are trying to invest our retirement portfolio in. That's what the government's trying to deal with right now, because guess what? Yay! Does this go out? Obama is trapped in the same biological spacesuit that you and I are. I know you like to think that he has a few extra features. We like to think that our leaders in Washington and the experts in the United Nations and everyone else that's leading us have extra features. No, they do not. But the second symptom, which occurs prior to collapse of civilizations, is the one that is the most dangerous, and we can trace this through every great civilization in history. In my book, the first third, I go through the Khmer, the Ming, the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, and I trace this pattern of collapse. What is it? We become so confused and so overwhelmed by what the facts are that we start trading unproven beliefs for facts. And when that happens, when we don't know the difference between what a fact is and what a belief is that's unproven, public policy becomes irrational. You begin to hear leaders say, I don't believe in climate change. I don't believe in evolution. Well, gosh, when's the last time you were in a natural history museum? 1.5 billion readings that the temperature of the Earth is going up. That's not something you believe in. Gravity isn't something you believe in. Speed of light used to be something you believed in. I don't know now with the new information that's coming out. So there are facts, and the facts are empirically provable, right? And then there are beliefs. By beliefs, I don't mean religious beliefs. When you put your money in the bank, you expect it to be there. When you draw it out, you don't know until you write a check and try to take it out, and one day it may not be there. When the light turns green and you walk across the sidewalk in New York, I just came from New York, they don't even wait for the light to turn green. They just think it's about time and they start moving, right? But when you have all kinds of beliefs. Scientists have beliefs. The human organism, every society that you look for. So if there's any atheists in this room, you should come and talk to me, because you cannot find a single civilization ever, a single group of humans that did not rely on facts and beliefs in order to survive. Where facts drop off, we lean on beliefs. It's just that simple. When we have no facts, we still have to function. So we see that when civilizations are thriving, they nurture facts and beliefs. But this dangerous turn begins to happen. Think the Crusades. We begin to turn away from rational fact toward beliefs, and public policy becomes irrational. I'm going to give you a specific example of the Mayan Empire. The Mayans knew for over 3,000 years they had a very tenuous relationship with rainfall. They knew if the rains didn't come, they wouldn't have enough food, and that their society would fall apart. So unbeknownst to a lot of you in this room, they were masters at hydraulic engineering. They built unprecedented reservoirs, underground cisterns to keep the water from evaporating, and they even used the underground cisterns as refrigeration units to store food during scarce years. They were phenomenal. They practiced crop rotation, water conservation. They had public waterworks. In every aspect, they were completely over and above any other civilization in terms of their water use. But as the drought continued, you see the Mayans shift away from rational, fact-based methods. They were practicing fetishism before, but alongside these hydraulic projects. But eventually, we see them give up on the hydraulic projects. At first, they begin sacrificing captured slaves. Then they turn on their own people, the infirm, young virgins. By this time, all reservoirs, cisterns, have been abandoned. At the very end, prior to the Mayan collapse, they are sacrificing newborn infants. There is no more pursuit of any fact-based remedy. So people say to me, did I hit you? I'm getting better at this. So people say to me, we're not doing that. We haven't made that turn. We're not sacrificing newborn infants. And I go, no. We're flying planes into buildings because we think that will improve our situation. We are waving fuzzy pictures in front of the United Nations and saying we think they have weapons of mass destruction and we need to now amass an army. Look, I'm neither left or right, so for all you people that want to cheer that I'm making a case for the left or the right, don't bother. Even debt, the idea that we'll never have to pay the bill. It's an illusion. It's not fact-based. In my book, I talk about 5 different obstacles, beliefs, and behaviors that prevent us from doing what's right. Even though we know the problems that may do our nation in or may do the entire planet in, we don't act on them. And there are 5 barriers, and I can't go into them today because they only give you 20 minutes. So the greatest discovery that you've never heard of, which is the title of my talk today, actually happened 152 years ago. When Charles Darwin discovered the very slow pace, and I live out in Big Sur, California, on a federally protected butterfly preservation, and I have to tell you, progress moves slow in nature. If it weren't for the seasons, it wouldn't be moving at all. I swear to you. So when I moved from Silicon Valley out to that butterfly preserve, I thought, wow, talk about technology just not being sustainable. There's an uneven rate of change between evolution and human progress. And in the end, that winds up showing itself in spades in our leadership. Didn't do so well. Okay. So, in fact, we've gotten so complex, I had to write myself a card that says, take a pause, take a breath. I don't know if any of you guys have seen this recent Verizon commercial where the guy walks into the store and he's got this belt on and it has a nav system and a computer and everything hanging off of it. And he walks up to the store clerk and he says to the clerk, I need something to help me. And the clerk says, no, 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 and runs up and hands him a cell phone and says, 200,000 apps. I got news for all of you. You can't handle 200,000 of anything. Nothing. Your brain cannot handle it. Even if you just had to take 5 minutes or 3 minutes to decide which apps you don't want, that'd take a year. Nobody's got a year to do that. We've just kind of exceeded our biological capability. But it's not just our cognitive limits. You were not born blank slates. Some of you were told a fib when you were younger. You were told that you were a blank slate, and your teacher wrote on you, and your mom wrote on you, and your dad wrote on you, and that's who you became. It isn't true. Talk to any evolutionary biologist. Your DNA is in this room because you were the biological winners. Your ancestors developed strategies and passed those on in your DNA, and the biological losers are not here today. They didn't make it. Right? So you don't really know what those tactics were. Some people are very violent. They may have come from ancestors that needed violence in order for their DNA to survive. I happen to have made a great discovery about myself. If there's a donut in the room, it's mine. You know, like they have the pizza and it's just the last pieces there, move away. It's mine. I wondered why I did that, because I'm an educated woman and I know that I should never eat a donut ever again the rest of my life. I can't justify it intellectually. But then I realized, I had an epiphany. I survived because my ancestors were really good, high-calorie seeking organisms. And during food scarcities, they survived. And those other guys that were eating carrots, they didn't make it. They didn't make it. I also discovered why I don't like exercise. Because my ancestors were very good at conserving calories. They laid around and didn't waste those calories unless they had to fight or look for more food. Now, you probably know people who could eat anything and they're wiry, skinny. Does anybody know anybody like that? Oh, gosh, I have friends that are like that, and I don't even know why I have them as friends. They could eat anything and they're wiry, but you know what? Their ancestors were the lean and mean runners that could make the most out of any calorie. So each of you came into this world with some kind of hardwiring. Now I want to tell you how that hardwiring plays out in modern times. One of the things that happens is if I had a snake here and I threw it out into the audience, you wouldn't even think. You'd bypass your brain, your body would be filled with chemicals, and you'd all jump away and say, she's a lunatic, run. And then one of you would say, oh, that's a garter snake. It's a garter snake, and you know what? They're really good. They keep rodent populations down. Your brain would engage. You'd say, yeah, we don't want to kill those snakes. Let's get a box. Let's give it a different environment. Okay? Now, your body is designed today to react to short-term immediate threats to that you perceive as being harmful to you. But when I tell you about climate change or shortages of prisons, right? Or I tell you pandemic viruses, we have to get ready for those because as climate change goes up, now dengue fever can move into Florida. So it amplifies the disease problem. I start to tell you all that stuff. You know what? Your heartbeat doesn't go up 1 beat an hour, even though that's the thing that could do us in. It didn't work. So we're hardwired to react to certain things, and yet our brain is hardwired to respond. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reacting is a physiological thing. You jump, you run, you try to protect your body. And then responding is using your brain, thinking. That's what we're talking about in our conference today. Other examples of things that you came hardwired with? Hoarding. When you hear about people like Bernie Madoff or someone like that taking everybody's money, more than he could ever use, why are we surprised? Why are we surprised? He's hoarding for survival. People that hoard don't know why they're hoarding. They're hoarding because they think they're going to die if they don't hoard. That's why they hoard. Competition is the same thing. Why, when you're working with somebody, do you get a guy in there or a gal in there and they want to compete with you and you're saying, no, let's collaborate. Let's work together, and they don't want to and you can't change them. Why does that happen? It happens because they were extreme competitors that succeeded. We have now broken down the human genome. You're going to hear about this more in the next couple of days. We've now broken down the human genome. Does everybody know this? And our nearest ancestor is the bonobo monkey. You in this room have less than a 1.7% difference in genetic material to a bonobo monkey. In my view, we've leveraged the heck out of that. The guys are not trying to have sex with their chairs. Nobody's throwing food across the room. We build spaceships and go into outer space. When we don't like an environment, we just build a submarine, and that's okay. We'll take our environment with us. We've done a remarkable job. But you know what? I may not be changing very quickly. I still want donuts and pizza. But food technology has changed. Our environment has become complicated and hostile to the desires and the needs that drive us. I'm going to steal a quote from my mentor, Dr. Edward O. Wilson. Today, we have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. And this is a dangerous situation. Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. What do you think is going to happen when you put those in a blender? You're going to have gridlock, and you're going to have a substitution of facts and beliefs. That is what's going to happen when you live in an environment that's like that. Okay, so I didn't want to write a book that was doom and gloom. I really didn't have it in me. It's my first book. I thought, gosh, I know what the pattern is. Now we have awareness. I can get out there and tell everyone. They'll tell people. We can start a different dialogue. Our problems are not political. They're not economic. Who cares about that? They're biological in nature. We're up against the human limit. That's all there is. That's it. It's a really simple explanation. And by the way, so is every other country. So is every other human organism. If anything, this should bring us all together. We should say, hey, France is up against the limit. Germany's up against the limit. The African continent's up against the limit. We've hit the limit at which humans can deal with complexity. But I didn't want to write a doomsday book. So what did I do? I went looking for solutions. And I came up with 4 solutions. That's the last half of the book. The first is awareness. 152 years ago, Charles Darwin, when he discovered the slow pace of evolution, he also discovered the reason that human civilizations fail. He just didn't articulate it, and he didn't say it. But he came under such fire for evolution in of itself. And by the way, I have to tell you that since this book has come out, I've had 42 death threats for simply using the word evolution. The E word is the most controversial word in the American language right now. I know it's hard to believe, isn't it? Particularly for people in this room. So awareness is number 1. We know the pattern, gridlock and substitution of facts and beliefs. We know that that happens before we collapse. What's the second thing that we can do outside of awareness of the pattern? We can mitigate. One definition of complexity is that there are many more wrong solutions than there are right ones, and the number of wrong ones are exponentially growing. We simply become bad pickers. But we're very fortunate because we have models for high failure rates. How many of you are familiar with venture capital? Okay, look it. If you're really impressed by venture capitalists, let me tell you, they're not experts at success. They're experts at failure. For every 100 companies they invest in, they expect only 10 or 15 to make it. The rest are going to have marginal returns or fail altogether. And yet they know the successes are going to far overwhelm the failures. So in a complex environment, we need our leaders, and you and I, to act like venture capitalists that invest in multiple solutions. What does that mean? I'm going to use a really painful example for me. The Gulf oil spill. Everybody remember night after night we were watching these mushroom clouds of oil spew out. I don't know about you, but I was sitting there thinking maybe we really did it. Like the movies, we opened up the earth, we can't close it. I was really getting scared. Then they brought all these people together and they said, what should we do? And they announced to the American people, we're going to drop a concrete box on the hole and that will do it. And I thought, really? A septic tank on top of that hole? And we're saved? It didn't sound right. So what did we do? Instead of realizing we're in a complex environment, it has a short time frame, it's mission critical, what do? We put a concrete box on it, we waited 30 days. That wasn't it. Okay, we're in an environment, more wrong solutions than right ones. Wrong ones are exponentially growing. You got to give me just a couple seconds here. Okay, so what did we do? Next thing was we're going to drill from the side. Next thing we were going to do was static kill. Fortunately for us, the third solution, static kill, worked. Compare that now to the Chilean miners. The rescue of the Chilean miners. How many watched that? Did you watch that on TV? Okay. You know and I know that they executed somewhere between 7 and 16 rescue plans simultaneously. They weren't worried about the cost. They weren't worried about failure. They acted like venture capitalists. They said some of these are going to work, some are not going to work, but it's mission critical. In other words, in order to succeed in a high failure rate environment, you must accept a very high threshold of waste. I have run out of time. I have run out of time, and I have some wonderful things to tell you about brain science, so I'm just going to roll over this really, really quickly. I'm going to tell you that the most exciting thing that will help us, because ultimately you can mitigate all you want, and you can be aware all you want, but the most important thing is for you to be able to arm the brain by being able to load content faster and make better decisions. And I would ask you to read the last section of the book about brain fitness tools that are being developed by neuroscientists right now. We've put them into a school in Jacksonville County. 23,000 school children, we've given them 10 minutes of brain fitness tools, neuroscientific tools, every morning before they start school, 4 years in a row. And those kids are now have twice the academic achievement of any other children. No other change. Your brain wants to be warmed up. If you think about it, if you're going to go run a marathon, what do? You stretch, you hydrate, your brain is part of your biology. Your brain wants to be warmed up before you load content. The second thing is, scientists have now discovered a third form of problem solving. Remember I told you that we've only evolved the left and right brain that's really good at finding lost luggage at the airport? We've now discovered by putting a skull cap on your head about 300 milliseconds before you're going to have an aha moment and connect two pieces of data in a way that you've never connected it before, we've discovered a small part of your brain called the ASTG, lights up like a Christmas tree. You are evolving a third form of problem solving. And up to this point, we thought that was folklore. We thought that the apple falling on Newton's head, and Archimedes sitting in a tub and water flowing over, and he goes, aha, eureka. We thought all those were just sort of folklore. But if you think about it, it's the first time in human history that we can put a skull cap on your head and administer increasingly complex problems until you reach a failure rate. And then all of a sudden, every now and again, it's a rare occurrence, that ASTG lights up and we see you have a major breakthrough. It's ideally matched to complexity. I try to induce these insight moments as much as I can, and I give you as much as I can in the book about things that neuroscientists know that help the brain operate better in a complex, high failure rate environment. Everyone complains, you didn't write enough. I go, it's a nonfiction book. You can't make stuff up, right? So I'm out of time today. If you'd like to talk more about the brain science, I really cheated it a lot. But I want to thank you all for having me here today.